Hey, what's up guys? We're back in the garage. Today we're going to be making a heat shield for this guy. The way this intake is positioned, it's right next to the exhaust manifold that produces a lot of heat, and this guy's sucking in a lot of hot air. So what I'm going to do is make an aluminum heat shield with stuff that I got from the hardware store. So yeah, let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is actually remove this where the factory airbox attached. It's not serving any purpose besides holding on to these relays, and I don't plan on putting the factory airbox back on. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that, relocate these. There you go, relay is installed. I'm gonna start mocking up the heat shield using cardboard. Making a cardboard mock-up I think is gonna be the most important part of this project because it is gonna determine how this thing fits and how it looks. So there you have it. Not much to look at right now, but this thing's all said and done. It's gonna look pretty good. I guess a tip that I could give is work with the biggest piece of cardboard you can. Big flat surfaces that hold their structure is probably best. I'm using smaller boxes, which I had to sort of tape together. It wasn't as rigid as I'd like. To figure out the height, I've seen people use these like toothpicks or long skewers and they'd stick them into the cardboard just like this. And I don't have that, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a zip tie. This is actually a zip tie that I cut in half, made little pieces. I'm gonna put a bunch of them on here, and the idea behind that is you close the hood and it's gonna push these down. That'll give me an idea of how tall to make this thing. Okay, so that didn't work. The hood doesn't even touch them. All right, so I went ahead and made longer ones. My concern with these is that they might be too flimsy. For some reason they get stuck in the cardboard. The hood will just bend it like this, and when I open it back up, it'll just be like boop. It'll say, oh, you don't need to cut it down so much. All right, so just as I feared, I was watching as the hood was closing on some of them, and I actually took the other ones out, but the hood was sort of bending these. I think the long skewers probably would work best. Also, if you had a more rigid cardboard setup. But I think this gives me a good roundabout height. I was able to see how close it was to contacting these. I'm gonna go ahead and wing it. I'm gonna add about an extra 1.5 inches, 2 inches. I think 1.5 inches is probably safe, so it's not gonna hit, but if it does hit, I can go ahead and cut it down in those places. There's a big gap here, so I'm making a flat plate that will have tabs I can fold up and then attach to this. So I have my templates here, and I went ahead and flattened out my aluminum, well, as best as possible. Timeout. This is actually 26 gauge galvanized steel, not aluminum. This is a 36-inch vent pipe with a 6-inch diameter, giving you about 18 inches of space across. This worked out great for my application. If you want to use aluminum, that's up to you. Just FYI. Back to the video. I went ahead and traced the templates onto here, also accounting for the height, and also made some tabs on this one so I can mount the pieces to each other and also to the car. I'm gonna go ahead and cut these out with a Dremel. Always wear eye protection. As you can see, I cut out the aluminum pieces here, and it was kind of a pain in the ass with the Dremel. I do suggest if you have a better way of cutting these, then I would probably do that. Maybe like aluminum shears. I think if I had those, the long straight parts would probably be a lot easier. Obviously, you probably won't be able to get that with the inside. I'm gonna go ahead and try to bend some of these pieces, try to mock this thing up on the car. Here's the side piece fitted into the car. I just put it up against the workbench and just pressed down to get a straight edge here. I had to do that in 2 places. I will need to trim some parts of it, but it looks like it fits pretty good. I'm pretty stoked on that. I made this bottom piece. The fitment is not great, like it's almost perfect. I did actually extend this wall slightly, and I didn't account for that. I think I'm gonna redo this piece. All right, so I did a bunch of extra trimming on this thing because I realized this thing was kind of leaning. What that was telling me was that it was too high in this area. So what I did was cut that down a lot more so that it straightened it out. The hood still does not close. I gotta figure out a way to find the high spot on this so that I could cut it down. And what I'm thinking is somehow using tape and putting tape along the top of this thing so that when I close the hood, the tape will stick to the high spot on the hood, and that will tell me where to cut. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut that, and we'll test fit it again. All right, so after much cutting down and test fitting, I finally got this to the point where this hood could close. I actually changed up a bit of this front design. I figure this strip that I'm gonna put on top of this, it'll be easier to bend across this curved surface. I have this big hole that I need to fill, and this is gonna go in here just like that. It's gonna be raised up about 1.5 inches off of this plate because of this opening right here. If I lay it flat, it runs into this thing. But if I raise it up just a little bit, it'll sit right on top of that, closing off this area. So because this is gonna be raised up 1.5 inches, I'm going to make a flap over here. That's gonna be 1.5 inches long. And then I'm gonna make another flap that's about 1/2 inch. And it's gonna be like a step, and that's where it's going to mount to the car. This side's gonna attach to the side section of the heat shield. I'm gonna have little flaps that come out about 1/2 inch. I'm gonna fold those up this way, and then I'm going to rivet those to the sidewall of the heat shield. All right, so there's my template. This is the outline of where I'm gonna be cutting. The dotted areas are the fold points. So just a heads up, make sure you get enough of these cutting wheels. I've gone through a handful of these wheels. They start off about this size and they end up getting smaller and smaller, but be prepared for that if you're using a Dremel. And again, always wear eye protection. So I'm gonna go ahead and file down the edges there and bend it into shape and then test fit it. Looks like it fits pretty good. I don't know if you can see it hitting. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark that where it needs to be cut. So I'm gonna trim that and then I'm gonna trim that. So I went ahead and trimmed that piece, cut that notch out, let's fit it. Not too shabby. That actually fits really well. Let's get a closer look. This area back here is all closed off pretty nice. I've got that little plug creeping through, so there's a notch cut out for that. It's not really touching this. There's enough space under here. Filter's not touching anything. Stoked. It's definitely not gonna come out without removing this pipe. Shouldn't be a problem. This comes out easy. That's the whole thing. I'm gonna use rivets here. Now it's time to test out my handy dandy hand riveter. This is from Harbor Freight. This thing costs $4.99, so hopefully it works well. But for $4.99, I mean, you can't beat it. Here's a diagram on how to use it. You drill, put your rivet into the hole. You use the gun to squeeze the rivet. You release. Simple enough. We'll use this size, whatever size that is. Find the right size drill bit. This one, 3/16. Way, center, tab there. All right, so now that we have our first holes drilled, I'm gonna go ahead and put rivets in there. I don't trust that I can keep these ones lined up because this tape wants to pull up. Now we gotta decide which side we want the ugly side to be on and the pretty side to be on. So I'm thinking we'll have the pretty side be on the outside. Harbor Freight, let's see what you got. If you guys don't know what these do, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this in there, in that hole, and this tool you put on the end of that and you pull this wire, and what that does is the little ball on the end of that will actually pull into this space and flare it out so that it joins the two pieces between it together. I mean, it's on there, it's not going anywhere. Drill these two spaces and then there's one right here. There it is. Now I gotta mount this into the car. So what I decided on was this. I'm gonna put 2 screws here and 1 L bracket here and then 1 L bracket here. So I'm gonna start with this, drill it right through the aluminum, through the frame car, and then I'll take the heat shield out and then use the 3/8 to finish boring out the hole for the riv nuts. Damn it, my drill died, so I'm gonna have to charge this. Fudge. These are just some aluminum brackets that I found. They bend really easily. Obviously, I'm not using this whole piece. I'm just gonna cut it down, use the end. I went ahead and bent this to shape, and that is exactly where I want it. The next thing I need is a bracket on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab the other one, shape that, and then I can get to cutting these. The good thing about these is that all you have to do is score them, and then you can just break them, shave that down a little bit with a file. So I made them a little bit longer so I could put 2 rivets to attach this to the heat shield. Got my battery charged, locked and loaded. Let's get this thing done. Make sure the riv nuts fit in there. Drops right in that side too. All right, so you screw the rib nut onto the end of the insert. Put it where you need to put it. Give it a little squeeze. Unscrew it. Those look good. Looks like that fits perfectly flushed where it needs to be, as well as that bracket. So let's go get some rib nuts in there and bolt these babies in. I'm using this massive drill bit as a center punch, and of course, Thor's hammer. Bolted it into the car, and let's give it a good shake test to see. Actually, it may need a bracket on the back side there. Just seems like that's kind of the weak point. So fast forward, got that bracket installed here in the back. It's sturdy, it's not going anywhere. So now the next step is to actually put this, this is like a gas line hose. So I went ahead and actually tested this out. I went ahead and sliced about half of that, and this is gonna sit on the top edge like this, so we can avoid having a sharp edge. Kind of button things up a little bit, make it look a little nicer. If I go ahead and just put it right on top of that, it's gonna just come off. So I have an idea of how I'm gonna fit that on there and get it to stay. This piece is not exactly to create an airtight seal between the heat shield and the hood. This is more so just purely aesthetic. If it does come up a little bit higher and create less of a gap between the hood, awesome. But the purpose of this is really just to kind of give it a more finished look. And I do think that does look better. I'm gonna cut 3 notches. That'll give me 2 tabs that I could bend, one this way and one that way. And I should be able to open this up, wrap it around those tabs, and then this thing won't come off. I went ahead and made 2 notches and then bent those tabs in both directions. And I did that down here, 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 close to these corners where the hose wants to lift up. I just made about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of those. So I'm gonna go ahead and see if the hose will stick to that. The hose is on there, it's secure. It does feel like it's a little loose in this area, so I'm gonna make another notch to help hold it down there. But other than that, I mean, the thing is pretty much on there. The next step is to paint the inside. I bought some flat black high temp paint, put a couple coats of that on the inside. To prep this, I'm gonna go ahead and sand this down so that the paint has a little something to stick to. For the back side of this, I'm gonna use this aluminized heat barrier with adhesive backing. So this side, we're gonna have that sticky heat shield applied, and on this side, it's gonna be black. Gone ahead and painted the inside of the heat shield and applied the sticky heat wrap to the outside. Let's get this tubing on and see what it looks like. There you have it, final product. Looking really nice, if I do say so myself. Everything fits nicely, everything's painted nicely. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in the car, let's see what it looks like. And I'm using these little split washers just in case these screws want to back out. Maybe these will help keep them in. So there you have it. This is my DIY intake heat shield for my 1999 Miata and the K&N intake system. I had this on the car for about a week now, and I figured I'd do a proper outro video. So far, I've noticed actually a big difference in the way the car drives. The best way I can explain it is if you ever have driven in the evenings when it's nice and crisp out, you notice that the engine is just really enjoying that cool air. This is kind of what it feels like all the time now with this thing. And I wish I would have done this a long time ago. There are a couple adjustments that I'm going to make with this. I actually noticed that it's hitting right here. Little mark, little indentation from where the hood's hitting. So I'm just going to take this off, shave that down a little bit. Also, some of the tabs that I bent that are holding this thing on, they're a little bit wider than some of the other tabs, and you can kind of see them kind of stick out. Like right there it's bulging, right there it's bulging. I'm just going to shave those down just a little bit, just so it's nice and smooth all the way around so you don't notice any wonkiness. But that's pretty much it. I'm really satisfied with the way this thing turned out. I'm actually really surprised on the difference this makes. Before or after a long drive, I could put my hand on the filter and notice how hot it was. Now I put my hand on there and it's nice and cool. You can tell that this thing's blocking a lot of that hot air that's over in this area. If you have an intake system like this on your car, definitely get yourself a heat shield or make one. So that's it for this video, guys. Thanks for coming by. I really hope this helped you guys out in some way. If it did, please give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.